I'm Jacob, 32, a software developer from Boston who once treasured our family Christmases more than anything. When Mom called saying they needed to keep things low-key this year due to money troubles, I understood completely. I offered to help, but they insisted on canceling our traditions entirely. So there I was on Christmas Day, alone in my apartment with Chinese takeout and a quiet tree. I had no idea that while I sat there missing them, a very different celebration was happening without me. Before I tell you how I discovered what really happened that Christmas, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by the people you love most. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, Christmas was always the highlight of our family year. My parents, Robert and Diana, created magic for my younger sister, Rachel, and me. We had traditions that felt sacred, decorating our massive pine tree, while Mom's sugar cookies baked, Dad reading The Night Before Christmas on Christmas Eve, and waking up at dawn to see what Santa had brought. As we grew older, the traditions evolved but remained special mimosas at breakfast, a friendly competition for the best gift, and everyone gathering in the kitchen to prepare our feast together. Our family was solidly middle class. Dad worked as an accountant at a local firm and Mom taught third grade at the elementary school. We never had extravagant gifts, but we never felt like we lacked anything either. Our home was always warm, welcoming, and filled with love. That's what made our holidays so special. Not the presents, but the presence of each other. I was particularly close with my parents growing up. As the firstborn, I often took on responsibility early. I was the one who mowed the lawn without being asked, who helped Dad with home repairs, who drove Mom to her doctor appointments when she had surgery a few years back. Rachel, 4 years younger than me, was always more free-spirited. While I was the reliable one, she was the dreamer, the artist, the one who brought spontaneity to our family. I loved her deeply, even when her impulsiveness sometimes created chaos. Things began to change about 3 years ago. Mom and Dad retired earlier than planned. They claimed their retirement funds weren't performing as well as expected, and they needed to tighten their belts. I immediately offered to help, sending them a few $100s monthly to supplement their income. They accepted gratefully, and I was happy to give back after all they'd given me. Around the same time, Rachel's life took a different turn. She'd always been interested in fashion and lifestyle content, but suddenly her social media presence exploded. She gained thousands of followers posting about luxury fashion, exotic vacations, and high-end beauty products. 2 years ago, she married Mark, an investment banker whose income seemed to fuel her increasingly lavish lifestyle. Their wedding was extravagant, a destination ceremony in the Bahamas that cost more than I made in 6 months. Meanwhile, I continued my steady path. I'd recently been promoted to senior developer at my company, a solid achievement with a comfortable salary increase. But unlike Rachel, I maintained a modest lifestyle. I lived in a nice but simple one-bedroom apartment, drove a 6-year-old Honda, and saved aggressively for retirement. My parents had taught me financial responsibility, and I took those lessons to heart. Throughout all these changes, I remained dedicated to our family. I never missed a birthday, always showed up for Sunday dinners when I could, and called my parents at least twice a week. When Dad mentioned their roof needed repairs last spring, I immediately sent $3,000 to help. When Mom's arthritis worsened, I researched specialists and drove 3 hours each way to take her to appointments. Family came first always. As this Christmas approached, I was especially excited. The previous year had been difficult for everyone, with the pandemic restrictions still affecting gatherings. This year would be different. We could finally be together properly again. I'd spent weeks choosing thoughtful gifts. A leather wallet I knew Dad had been eyeing, a silk scarf in Mom's favorite shade of blue, and a high-end camera lens for Rachel's growing social media business. I'd even taken time off work a full week to spend with family, something I rarely did. The call from Mom came on December 1st. Her voice sounded strange, hesitant. "Jacob, honey, Dad and I have been talking. We think we should keep Christmas low-key this year. Money's been tight with the property taxes going up." "Mom, I can help with that," I immediately offered. "Or I could host at my place. It's smaller, but we'd make it work." No, she said quickly. "We just think it would be better to skip the big celebration this year. Maybe just exchange cards." Dad called the next day, reinforcing the message. "Son, we're just not in a position to do gifts and a big dinner this year. The retirement fund took a hit, and we're watching every penny." Let's just have a quiet holiday separately and get together in the new year when things settle down. Something felt off about these conversations, but I respected their decision. If they were struggling financially, the last thing I wanted was to add pressure. So I agreed, though disappointment settled heavily in my chest. It would be my first Christmas without family, but I told myself it was just 1 year. I canceled my time off request, figuring I could use the holiday pay, and tried to adjust my expectations. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, I noticed Rachel posting more extravagantly than ever on Instagram. Pictures of her and Mark choosing an enormous tree for their new house, shopping bags from luxury stores, elaborate decorations. When I texted her about Mom and Dad's decision, her response was brief. "Yeah, they mentioned that. Bummer. Mark and I are probably just doing something small too." I tried not to feel the sting of jealousy seeing her lavish preparations while our parents claimed financial hardship. Perhaps she was insensitive to their situation. Or maybe Mark's income insulated her from understanding the reality of retirement on a fixed income. Either way, I decided to focus on making the best of my solo Christmas, never suspecting what was really happening behind the scenes. Christmas morning arrived with a stillness that felt wrong. For as long as I could remember, this day had been filled with excitement, laughter, and family chaos. Instead, I woke up alone in my quiet apartment. The only sound, the distant hum of the refrigerator, and occasional car passing on the street below. I reached for my phone and sent the obligatory holiday texts. "Merry Christmas, Mom and Dad, love you both. Merry Christmas, Rachel. Hope you and Mark have a great day." Mom responded almost immediately. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Love you too." Dad followed shortly after, "Merry Christmas, son. We'll call you later." Rachel's reply came hours later, a simple Merry Xmas with a tree emoji. Around noon, my parents finally video called. They sat close together on their living room sofa, the familiar backdrop of their home visible, but something seemed off. No decorations, no tree, nothing that indicated Christmas was happening there. "Merry Christmas," I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Merry Christmas, honey," Mom replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Dad waved, but remained quiet. "How's your day going?" I asked. "Oh, just quiet. We're just having some soup for lunch," Mom answered, gesturing vaguely toward the kitchen. "Nothing special. How about you?" "About the same." "Quiet," I said, not mentioning the small tree I'd put up or the carefully wrapped gifts for them still sitting under it. I thought I might order Chinese food later. "That sounds nice," Dad said, his voice oddly strained. "Listen, son, we can't talk long. Your mother's sister is supposed to call soon. Aunt Patricia. I thought she was traveling to Florida this year." A flicker of something alarm crossed my father's face. "Right, yes, but she's calling before she leaves." The call lasted barely 5 minutes. When we hung up, a hollow feeling expanded in my chest. I tried calling Rachel next, but she didn't answer. I sent another text. "Hope you're having a good day. Would love to see your face for a quick Christmas hello." She read it, but never responded. Determined not to spiral into self-pity, I tried to make the day special for myself. I decorated my apartment modestly. A small artificial tree with a few ornaments, some string lights around my living room window, a holiday-scented candle burning on the coffee table. I put on classic Christmas movies, starting with It's a Wonderful Life, and tried to lose myself in the story I'd seen countless times. By late afternoon, I ordered from the only restaurant open, Golden Dragon, the Chinese place around the corner. I got all my favorites: General Tso's chicken steamed dumplings, vegetable fried rice, and an egg roll. The delivery guy looked almost as sad as I felt working on Christmas Day. I tipped him $30 on a $40 order, and the genuine surprise and gratitude on his face was the first real moment of Christmas spirit I'd felt all day. I ate directly from the containers while watching Die Hard, trying to convince myself this was a perfectly acceptable way to spend Christmas. But between bites of food that tasted less satisfying than I'd hoped, memories kept intruding: Dad carving the turkey while wearing a ridiculous Santa hat, Mom's cranberry sauce that nobody actually liked but was tradition. Nonetheless, Rachel and I bickering over the last dinner roll, only to split it exactly in half, as we always did. The gifts I'd already ordered for my family sat wrapped under my small tree, their cheerful paper and bows now seeming like artifacts from a different reality. I'd wrapped them weeks ago, before I knew our Christmas was canceled. Now they sat there as silent reminders of my expectations and disappointment. As evening settled in, I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. What better time than a lonely Christmas to break out the 18-year-old Macallan? I settled back on the couch, third Christmas movie of the day, playing, barely registering the plot. The apartment grew darker as I didn't bother turning on lamps, the only illumination coming from the television screen and the twinkling lights of my sad little tree. By my third whiskey, a pleasant numbness had settled over me. I dozed off on the couch sometime after 9, the empty food containers still on the coffee table, movie credits rolling unwatched. My last conscious thought was that tomorrow would be better, just an ordinary day without the weight of holiday expectations. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when my phone pinged with a notification. Half awake, I grabbed it, squinting at the bright screen in the dark room. It was from Instagram. Anthony Rivera 9-2 started a live video. Anthony was an old friend from college who still kept in touch with both Rachel and me. Curious about what he was doing on Christmas night, I tapped the notification without thinking too much about it. What I saw made me sit straight up, sleep and whiskey fog instantly cleared by a surge of adrenaline. The video showed a crowded, festively decorated room, Christmas music blaring, people dancing and laughing. Anthony was panning around, capturing the celebration, and there unmistakably was my sister Rachel, dressed in a sparkly red dress, holding a champagne flute, throwing her head back in laughter. Before I could process what I was seeing, Anthony turned the camera again, and in the background, by a lavishly decorated Christmas tree that looked at least 10 feet tall, stood my parents. My supposedly financially struggling parents who were just having soup and keeping Christmas low-key. Dad was wearing a Christmas sweater I'd never seen before, and Mom was elegantly dressed in a new-looking outfit, nothing like the casual clothes they'd worn during our video call hours earlier. I stared at my phone in disbelief as the first inkling of what was happening began to dawn on me. This wasn't some small gathering. This was a full-blown Christmas party, and I was the only one who hadn't been invited. I barely slept that night. Anthony's live video ended after just a few minutes, but those moments had shattered everything I thought I knew about my family's Christmas plans. I lay awake, replaying those brief glimpses, questioning if I'd somehow misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't really my parents. Maybe it was an old video. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. Morning brought a flood of notifications that removed any lingering doubt. As I scrolled through Instagram, the evidence piled up with brutal clarity. Anthony had posted a story highlight from the night Rachel's Christmas extravaganza. It was titled with dozens of images and video clips. I forced myself to look at each one, my chest tightening with every swipe. The first showed the exterior of Rachel and Mark's new house, transformed with professional lighting into a winter wonderland. The next showed their foyer with a hired Santa greeting guests and taking photos. Then the dining room, where a catering team in matching uniforms served from gleaming chafing dishes. "Best Christmas feast ever," read Anthony's caption over a table laden with prime rib, turkey, ham, and dozens of side dishes. Nothing like the simple meals we'd had growing up. Another swipe revealed a professional DJ set up in their living room, complete with dance lights, and a small dance floor where several people I recognized were already dancing. "DJ spinning until midnight," the caption exclaimed. But it was the next series of images that truly crushed me. My entire extended family was there. Aunt Patricia, who was supposedly calling from before her trip to Florida, was pictured with her husband and their 3 kids, all dressed in coordinating Christmas outfits. My cousins from my dad's side, who lived several states away and whom I hadn't seen in years, were pictured laughing by the bar. My mother's brother and his family, my grandparents from both sides, even my godparents, who rarely attended family functions anymore, all present, all celebrating. The party wasn't just family. I recognized neighbors from my parents' street, my father's former colleagues, my mother's friends from her teaching days, and perhaps most painfully, friends I had introduced to Rachel over the years, college roommates, co-workers. I was close with people I considered my friends first. As I continued scrolling, numb with disbelief, I found a group photo that must have included at least 50 people, all raising glasses in a toast, with Rachel and Mark at the center. My parents stood proudly beside them, beaming with joy in a way I hadn't seen in years. The final nail came when I found Rachel's own Instagram post from the night before, posted at exactly 1:15 in the morning when I was fitfully trying to sleep. It was a professional quality photo of her and Mark in front of their massive Christmas tree, the caption reading, "Annual Williams Family Christmas Party. Bigger and better than ever. So blessed to host this magical night for everyone we love. Tradition means everything. Williams Christmas, blessed life. Annual. This wasn't even the first time. My hands shaking, I opened Rachel's profile and scrolled back through her feed. There it was, photos from last Christmas showing a similar party, though slightly smaller. I hadn't seen these posts because I'd been muting Rachel's content occasionally when her lavish lifestyle posts made me feel inadequate. Now I unmuted everything and discovered a truth that made me physically ill. This had been happening for 3 years. 3 years of low-key Christmases for me, while my family celebrated without me. I sat on my couch, still surrounded by yesterday's takeout containers, and felt something break inside me. The betrayal was so complete, so carefully orchestrated that I couldn't even cry. All those conversations about financial struggles, all those times they claimed to be keeping things simple, lies designed to exclude me while maintaining the appearance of family unity. Anger surged through me, hot and unfamiliar. I grabbed my phone and called my mother, straight to voicemail. I tried my father, same result. I called Rachel repeatedly, each call disconnecting after several rings. Finally, I sent a text to our family group chat. Interesting to see photos from the low-key Christmas you were all having. Thanks for including me in the family traditions. 50-plus people catered food, and a DJ must be the new definition of financial struggles. I followed up with individual messages, each more hurt and angry than the last, to my parents. After everything I've done to help you, this is how you treat me. Why? Just tell me why I'm the only one not worth including. To Rachel, I saw all the pictures. Everyone was there except me, your own brother. What did I do to deserve this? No responses came. I checked social media obsessively throughout the day, watching as more photos appeared from various guests. Each new post felt like another betrayal. My cousin Melissa posted a video of my mother dancing with my dad, captioned, "Aunt Diana and Uncle Robert still got the moves after 35 years. My childhood friend Jason posted a picture with my sister, annual Christmas party with my favorite Williams. Thanks for always including me, Rach. Always including him, but never me." By evening, my shock had hardened into a cold, clear anger. I was done with the tears, done with the hurt confusion. Now I wanted answers. If my family thought they could simply ignore what they'd done, they were about to discover a side of me they'd never seen before. The reliable, understanding Jacob they could always count on had disappeared, left alone in an apartment on Christmas, with nothing but Chinese takeout and lies. 2 days passed before anyone in my family responded to my messages. 2 days of silence that spoke volumes about our relationship. I'd gone from hurt to angry, to a strange, cold detachment. I went to work, smiled at colleagues who asked about my holiday, and lied about having a quiet but nice time with family. The alternative, explaining that my entire family had conspired to exclude me from Christmas, felt too humiliating to voice. On the morning of December 27th, my phone finally rang with my mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but some remaining thread of hope made me pick up. "Jacob." Her voice was tentative, guilty. "Yes." I kept my response flat, refusing to make this easier for her. "I'm sorry we haven't called back. It's been hectic." She paused, waiting for me to fill the silence as I usually would. I didn't. About the party, she finally continued when it became clear I wouldn't rescue the conversation. It wasn't planned. Rachel decided last minute to have some people over, and it just evolved. Evolved into a catered event with professional lighting and a hired DJ. My voice remained steady despite the anger boiling beneath it. Evolved into our entire extended family, flying in from across the country, evolved into an annual tradition that somehow never included me. "It wasn't like that, honey." Her voice took on a pleading tone. "We thought you were busy with work. You always work so hard, and Rachel said you probably wouldn't want to come to something so flashy. So you decided to lie to me, instead of letting me make that choice for myself. You told me you were struggling financially and couldn't do Christmas at all. Well, we didn't pay for the party, Rachel and Mark hosted everything, and that makes it okay to lie to me, to exclude only me from a family gathering. Her silence was answer enough. Jacob, please try to understand. Rachel has a certain image to maintain for her social media. These parties are part of her brand. She was worried you might disapprove. That statement cut through my anger to reveal a deeper hurt. So I was excluded because I might disapprove, because I'm not fancy enough for Rachel's brand. No, that's not. She stopped. Can we discuss this in person? Your father and I would like to see you. We arranged to meet at their house the following day. Before hanging up, I asked one more question, Mom. How many years has this been happening? Her hesitation told me everything. 3, she finally admitted. But the first year was much smaller. After disconnecting, I found a text from Rachel waiting. Way to overreact. It was just a party. Not everything is about you. You're always so judgmental about my lifestyle, and I didn't need your negativity ruining my event. You chose your path. I chose mine. Don't be jealous because mine comes with perks you gave up to be responsible. Her words confirmed every suspicion I'd had about the real reason for my exclusion. I didn't respond, saving my thoughts for the in-person conversation to come. The next morning I drove to my parents' suburban home, the place where all those cherished Christmas memories had been created. It looked different now, tainted by what I'd learned. I sat in the driveway for several minutes, gathering my courage before walking to the door. They were waiting in the living room, perched anxiously on the edge of the sofa. The Christmas tree that wasn't happening this year stood in the corner, fully decorated. Jacob, my father began, we're sorry you're upset. Not sorry they lied. Not sorry they excluded me. Sorry I was upset. I'm not just upset, I said, remaining standing. I'm hurt beyond anything I've ever felt from you. I want to understand why my own family would go to such lengths to exclude me from Christmas while pretending there was no celebration at all. What followed was 30 minutes of uncomfortable explanations and weak justifications. Rachel had taken over the Christmas tradition 3 years ago, when she and Mark bought their large house. She enjoyed hosting and had the space. The first year they'd invited just immediate family and a few friends, and had intended to include me, they claimed, but I was working that weekend. I wasn't. The second year the party grew, and Rachel worried I would make comments about the expense and extravagance. This year it had become a major event, and Rachel had specifically asked them not to include me. She said, you two haven't been getting along, my mother explained, though this was news to me. She said you're always making little comments about her lifestyle and her choices. And you chose to side with her, I said, the reality of the situation crystallizing. You chose to lie to me, to pretend there was no Christmas celebration at all, rather than stand up for me or tell her she was being ridiculous. My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. We didn't want to cause problems. So you decided I was the expendable one. The hurt in my voice was raw. After everything I've done for this family, I've sent you money every month for 3 years. I drove Mom to every doctor's appointment last year. I helped pay for your new roof. And this is how you repay me, by deciding I'm not important enough to include in Christmas. It wasn't like that, Jacob, my mother protested, tears forming. We love you, we just didn't know how to handle the situation. You could have told me the truth. You could have stood up to Rachel and said excluding your son wasn't an option. You could have chosen not to attend a party I wasn't welcome at. They had no response to this. As we sat in uncomfortable silence, the front door opened, and Rachel walked in without knocking. She froze when she saw me, then recovered quickly, her expression hardening. Oh great, the pity party's in full swing, she said, dropping her designer bag on a chair. Rachel, my mother warned, but she continued. What, he's been blowing up everyone's phones for days because he wasn't invited to a party. It's childish. It wasn't about the party, I said, turning to face her. It was about the lies. It was about our entire family, including our parents, deciding I wasn't worth including and then creating an elaborate fiction to keep me away. Oh, please, she rolled her eyes. Mom and Dad said you were busy with work like always. You're always too busy being perfect and responsible to have any fun. They told me Christmas was canceled, I said quietly. They said they were struggling financially and couldn't do gifts or dinner this year. Meanwhile, you were hosting a catered event for 50 people. Rachel looked momentarily surprised, then glanced at our parents. Well, they probably knew you'd disapprove. You always do. Every time I post anything about my life, you have some subtle dig about materialism or superficiality. I've never said anything like that to you. You don't have to say it. It's in your expression, your tone, the way you talk about your simple life, like it makes you morally superior. Old childhood dynamics surfaced Rachel's perpetual feeling that I was the good one, her competitive streak, her need for attention. But we weren't children anymore, and this wasn't about sibling rivalry. This was about respect and honesty. Rachel, I've supported your choices even when I didn't understand them. I've celebrated your successes. I would never have judged your party. I would have been happy to be included in a family celebration. Right, she scoffed. You would have shown up in your Target clothes and made everyone uncomfortable. The cruelty of her statement hung in the air. My parents looked mortified but said nothing. In that moment, I realized I'd prepared for this conversation. I'd spent 2 sleepless nights thinking about what really mattered to me, about the kind of family I wanted, about my own worth. I came here today hoping for an explanation and an apology, I said, addressing all of them. What I've found instead is confirmation that my feelings and inclusion in this family are secondary considerations at best. I've always believed that family means honesty, respect, and showing up for each other. I've lived those values, sending money when you claim to need it, being there for emergencies, never missing an important moment. But clearly we have different definitions of family. I stood up, a strange calm settling over me. From now on, I'll be establishing some boundaries. I won't be sending money without transparency about where it's going. I won't be available at a moment's notice for emergencies if I'm not important enough to include in celebrations. And I won't accept being lied to or gaslighted about why I was excluded. My mother began to cry in earnest. My father looked stunned. Rachel's expression was unreadable. If you want me in your lives, I continued it, will be with honesty and respect. I deserve that much. When you're ready to offer that, I'll be here. Until then, I need some distance to heal from this. I walked out, leaving them sitting in silence. As I drove away, I felt something I hadn't expected, a sense of power and self-respect that had been missing during those lonely hours in my apartment on Christmas Day. I had stood up for myself, named the hurt clearly, and set boundaries. Whatever happened next, I would face it with a new understanding of my own worth. Life settled into a strange new pattern in the days following that confrontation. I focused on work, started a new exercise routine, and spent evenings with friends who had no idea about the family drama I was experiencing. The new year came and went. I attended a party thrown by coworkers, forced myself to smile at midnight, and drove home alone, wondering what 2023 would bring. I hadn't heard from my parents or Rachel since walking out of their house. Part of me was hurt by their silence, but another part recognized it as the natural consequence of the boundaries I'd set. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I wasn't rushing to smooth things over, to be the peacemaker, to prioritize family harmony over my own feelings. 2 weeks into January, as I was settling into my desk at work, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Jacob, can you help with January mortgage? Need $4,100 by the 30th. Having temporary cash flow problem. Will explain when we talk. Love, Dad. I stared at the message in disbelief. After everything that had happened, the lies, the exclusion, the uncomfortable confrontation, the first contact was a request for money. Not an apology, not a thoughtful reflection on what had transpired, but a financial demand that exceeded any amount I'd ever sent them before. My initial reaction was anger, then confusion. My parents had owned their home for over 25 years. Their mortgage payment should have been modest, nowhere near $4,000. And they'd never mentioned mortgage troubles before. Their financial concerns had always been vague, centered around utilities, property taxes, or medical costs. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I did something I'd never done before I started investigating my parents' financial situation. First, I reviewed my own bank statements, tallying exactly how much money I'd sent them over the past 3 years. The total shocked me, nearly $30,000, not including the $3,000 for the roof repair or the various other emergency expenses I'd covered. That evening, I dove deeper. I scrolled through my parents' social media accounts, something I rarely did because their posts were infrequent and usually just family photos. But as I looked more carefully, a pattern emerged. Despite claiming financial hardship, there were posts showing recent purchases. My father with a new set of golf clubs last summer. My mother at a spa weekend with her friends in November, both of them on a cruise just 6 months ago. Then I found something that made my stomach drop. A post from my mother in October, congratulating Rachel on her new car, a luxury SUV that easily cost $70,000, with the caption, "So proud we could help you get your dream car. You deserve it." They had helped Rachel buy a luxury vehicle while telling me they could barely afford their property taxes. I expanded my search to Rachel's more prolific social media presence. Between her carefully curated posts about fashion and lifestyle were hints of financial support from our parents. A "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for the amazing anniversary trip to Europe" post from September. A "couldn't have created my dream" home office without my amazing parents update from last spring, complete with photos of high-end furniture and equipment. A pattern formed in my mind. My parents weren't struggling financially. They were funding Rachel's extravagant lifestyle while relying on my monthly contributions to maintain their own. And now they needed an unprecedented amount from me with no explanation beyond temporary cash flow problem. The next morning I called my father directly, bypassing the text message he'd sent. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice cautiously neutral. "Jacob, good to hear from you. I got your text," I said, skipping pleasantries. $4,000 is a lot of money, Dad. That's not a normal mortgage payment for your house. What's really going on?" His sigh was heavy, resigned. "It's complicated, son. I have time. Explain it to me." What followed was a halting, uncomfortable confession. Yes, their actual mortgage payment was much lower, only about $1,200. But they had taken out a home equity line of credit 3 years ago, using their house as collateral. The payments for that were coming due, and they were struggling to meet them. What was the equity line for? I pressed, though I already suspected the answer. Another long pause. Various things. Home improvements. Some investments. What kind of investments, Dad? He cleared his throat. We helped Rachel and Mark with the down payment on their house, and there were some other expenses for Rachel's career development. Her influencer career, I clarified. You took out equity against your home to fund Rachel's social media presence and help her buy a mini mansion. She needed to project a certain image, he said defensively. Her whole career depends on it, and it's starting to pay off. She's getting sponsorships now. And the car, the European vacation, the home office renovation, were those investments too? His silence confirmed what I already knew. Dad, have you been using the money I've been sending you to help fund Rachel's lifestyle? Not directly, he hedged, but I suppose. Indirectly. If we hadn't been helping her, we wouldn't have needed your contributions for our regular expenses. The admission hit like a physical blow. For 3 years I'd been unknowingly subsidizing not my parents' retirement, but my sister's artificial life of luxury. The same sister who had mocked my Target clothes and deliberately excluded me from family gatherings. We never meant to hurt you, Jacob, my father said, misinterpreting my silence. Rachel's at a critical point in her career. She needs to maintain appearances. And she and Mark, well, they've overextended themselves a bit with the house and everything. So you've been borrowing against your retirement to prop up their lifestyle, I said flatly. And now you can't make the payments. It's just temporary, he insisted. Once Rachel secures more sponsorships, she'll be able to pay us back. And Mark is up for a promotion. And in the meantime, you expect me to bail you out. Again. Jacob, please. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. We could lose the house. The house where I grew up. The house filled with memories. The house where Christmas had supposedly been canceled while my family celebrated without me. I need to think about this, I said finally. And I want to meet with you and Mom in person with financial documents. I want to understand exactly what's going on before I consider giving you any more money. He agreed reluctantly, and we set a time for the weekend. As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at the deception, concern for my parents' financial situation, and an odd sense of clarity. For years I'd been the reliable one, the responsible one, the one they could always count on. Now I was seeing the cost of that role, and I wasn't sure I wanted to pay it anymore. Saturday morning arrived with a sense of grim determination. I'd spent the week preparing for this meeting, reviewing my finances, gathering evidence of my contributions to my parents, and most importantly, clarifying in my own mind what I was and wasn't willing to do going forward. I arrived at my parents' house at 10 o'clock sharp, a folder of documents under my arm. They greeted me with awkward hugs and offers of coffee, which I accepted more to give my hands something to do than out of any desire for caffeine. We settled at the dining room table, the same table where we'd shared countless family meals, holiday feasts, and serious discussions over the years. "I've been thinking about your request," I began, placing my folder on the table. "But before I make any decisions, I need complete transparency about your financial situation. I've brought records of every payment I've made to you over the past 3 years, almost $30,000, not including one-off emergency expenses." My father's eyes widened slightly. I don't think he'd realized the total was so high. "I want to see your mortgage statements, the terms of your home equity line, and any other debts you're carrying. I also want to understand exactly how much you've given to Rachel during this same period." My mother shifted uncomfortably. "Jacob, that seems rather invasive." "You're asking me for over $4,000, I replied steadily. "I think I have a right to understand where my money is going, especially given what I've learned recently." Reluctantly, they produced the documents I'd requested. The picture they painted was worse than I'd imagined. My parents had taken out a $100,000 equity line 3 years ago. They'd already used most of it, $40,000 for Rachel and Mark's house. Down payment, $20,000 for various expenses related to Rachel's social media career, $15,000 toward her car, and the rest for home repairs, travel, and other discretionary spending. They'd been making interest-only payments, but now the principal had come due. They were also carrying significant credit card debt, much of it from helping furnish Rachel's house and funding what my mother uncomfortably referred to as family celebrations. The Christmas parties, I clarified. Among other things, my father admitted. "So let me understand this correctly," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "You've been telling me you're struggling financially and accepting my money monthly while simultaneously funding Rachel's lifestyle to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. You've put your house, your primary asset, at risk to maintain appearances for her social media career. And now that the bills are coming due, you're turning to me to bail you out." Again. They didn't deny it. They couldn't. "We thought we were investing in her future," my mother said defensively. "She has real potential in this influencer space. Some of these people make millions. And what about my future? What about your future? You're in your 60s with a house that's now heavily mortgaged and little retirement savings left. What happens in 5 years, 10 years? My father looked down at his hands. "We thought it would pay off by now." As we sat in uncomfortable silence, the front door opened again without knocking. Rachel strode in, her expression darkening when she saw me. "What's he doing here?" she asked my parents, as if I weren't sitting right there. "We're having a family discussion," my mother said carefully. "About finances." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "You told him about the money they've given you, about the home equity line they took out to fund your perfect life on Instagram?" "Yes, they told me," I answered. "They had to, since they're now asking me for over $4,000 to make payments on debt they incurred largely on your behalf." Rachel's face flushed. "That's between them and me. They chose to help me because they believe in me, unlike some people. I've always believed in you, Rachel. What I don't believe in is deception and financial irresponsibility." "Oh, here comes St. Jacob with his financial lecture," she spat. "Not everyone wants to live in a boring apartment and drive a boring car and have a boring life like you. Some of us have ambitions." "Rachel," my father warned, but she was just getting started. "You think you're so much better than everyone because you save money and live below your means. But guess what? Nobody cares. Nobody's looking at your sensible lifestyle and modest apartment on social media. People want aspiration, luxury, beauty. That's what I give them, and that's why I'm succeeding." "Are you succeeding?" I asked quietly. "Because from these financial documents, it looks like you're living well beyond your means and relying on our parents to fund a lifestyle you can't actually afford." "It's called investing in yourself," she shot back. "Something you'd know nothing about." "No, it's called living in a fantasy world at the expense of the people who care about you." Mom and Dad could lose their house because of your investments. Did you know that? A flicker of something doubt-concern crossed her face before she masked it with indignation. They're adults who make their own decisions. If they chose to help me, that's their business. And if they're now asking me for money to cover those decisions, that makes it my business too. The argument escalated, old resentments bubbling to the surface. Rachel accused me of jealousy, of trying to control our parents, of never supporting her dreams. I countered with facts about financial reality, about the consequences of their choices, about the hypocrisy of excluding me from family gatherings, while expecting me to bail them out financially. My parents sat uncomfortably between us, occasionally trying to mediate, but mostly watching, as years of unspoken tension finally found voice. Eventually, when the shouting had subsided into tense silence, I pulled out a document I'd prepared the night before. I've thought a lot about what I want to say today. I began, my voice steadier than I felt. About family, about respect, about financial responsibility, and about how we treat the people we claim to love. I looked at each of them in turn: my father, who couldn't meet my eyes; my mother, who looked both guilty and defensive; Rachel, who was still seething. I've always believed that family means supporting each other, being honest with each other, and showing up when it matters. For years I've lived those values: sending money when you said you needed it, being available whenever you called, prioritizing your needs above my own. I did that gladly because I thought we shared the same understanding of what family means. I took a deep breath. But I've learned that's not the case. I've learned that in this family I'm expected to give without question, to accept exclusion without complaint, and to be available financially while being deliberately kept at arm's length emotionally. That's not a healthy dynamic, and I won't participate in it anymore. My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I've made some decisions about going forward. First, about the money you're asking for, I'm willing to help, but with conditions. I slid a document across the table. This is a formal loan agreement. I'll provide the $4,100 you need for this month's payment, but it will be a loan with clear terms, not a gift. You'll repay me over the next 2 years with modest interest. The agreement also stipulates that you'll meet with a financial advisor of my choosing to develop a plan for your retirement that doesn't involve continuing to deplete your assets. My father picked up the document, scanning it with a frown. You want us to sign a legal document? We're family. Yes, exactly. We're family, which means we should be honest with each other about money and expectations. This makes everything clear. I turned to Rachel. Second, I'm setting boundaries about my involvement in family events. I won't be excluded from family gatherings while being expected to provide financial support. Either I'm part of this family in all ways or I'm not. You can't have it both ways anymore. Rachel rolled her eyes, but I detected uncertainty beneath her bravado. And finally, I'm stepping back from my role as the family fixer. I love you all, but I won't enable financial decisions that harm any of us in the long run. That means no more monthly payments, no more emergency bailouts without transparency and a plan, and no more accepting treatment that diminishes my worth in this family. A heavy silence fell over the table. My father still held the loan agreement, looking stunned. My mother wiped away tears. Rachel stared out the window, arms crossed defensively. This isn't about punishment, I said more gently. It's about creating healthier patterns for all of us. Mom and Dad, you need a sustainable retirement plan, not one that depends on either of your children. Rachel, you need to build a life you can actually afford, not one that looks good on Instagram but creates financial chaos behind the scenes. And I need to value myself enough to expect basic respect and inclusion from my family. I stood up, gathering my remaining documents. The choice is yours. Sign the agreement, and we start rebuilding our relationship with honesty and clear expectations. Or don't, and find another solution to your financial problems. Either way, I'm no longer available to be used financially while being excluded emotionally. With that, I walked out, leaving the loan agreement on the table. As I drove away, I felt neither triumph nor sadness, but a profound sense of having finally stood up for my own worth. Whatever they decided, I had made my position clear. I deserved better, and I was no longer afraid to say so. 6 months passed, bringing summer heat and unexpected changes. After leaving my parents' house that January day, I'd braced myself for further conflict or perhaps complete estrangement. Instead, something surprising happened. My family began to change. My parents signed the loan agreement the very next day, their signatures accompanied by a handwritten note of apology that acknowledged for the first time how their actions had hurt me. They followed through on meeting with the financial advisor I recommended, a straight-talking woman who helped them develop a realistic retirement plan that didn't involve depleting their assets or relying on their children. The process wasn't easy for them. They had to confront uncomfortable truths about their spending, their enabling of Rachel, and the precarious financial position they'd created. They sold their timeshare, cut up several credit cards, and began the slow work of rebuilding their savings. Each month, they repaid a portion of my loan on time and without complaint. Rachel's journey was more complicated. Initially, she reacted to my boundaries with anger and accusations, doubling down on her lavish social media presence while avoiding direct contact with me. But reality has a way of asserting itself. By March, she was facing her own financial reckoning as credit card bills mounted and her sponsorships failed to generate the income she'd anticipated. Mark's expected promotion fell through, creating additional pressure. In April, she reached out with a text that surprised me. "Can we talk not about money, just brother and sister?" Over coffee at a neutral location, I saw a side of Rachel I hadn't witnessed in years, vulnerability beneath the carefully curated exterior. She didn't apologize directly for excluding me from Christmas, but she admitted feeling competitive with me since childhood, always believing I was the good one, while she was the problem child. "I think I wanted to prove I could be successful in my own way," she confessed. "To show everyone I could create something impressive, even if it wasn't the kind of success you chose." "I never judged your choices," I told her honestly. "I just wanted honesty and respect." "I know that now," she said quietly. Our relationship remained fragile, but that conversation opened a door. Over the following months, Rachel began scaling back her social media presence, focusing on more authentic content rather than manufactured luxury. She and Mark downsized to a smaller house, a move she framed online as embracing minimalism, but privately acknowledged was financial necessity. As for me, these months brought profound personal growth. I established stronger boundaries, not just with family, but in all relationships. I began therapy to understand the patterns that had led me to accept exclusion, while continuing to give to value myself through what I could provide, rather than expecting fundamental respect. I built deeper connections with friends who valued me for myself, not what I could do for them. I dated more intentionally, no longer ignoring red flags of one-sided relationships. I even took a solo trip to the mountains, something I'd always wanted to do but had never prioritized above family obligations. Perhaps most significantly, I created new traditions. When June arrived, I hosted a summer solstice gathering at my apartment. Nothing elaborate, just good food and better conversation with people who genuinely wanted to be there. My parents attended somewhat awkwardly at first, but with genuine effort. Rachel came too, bringing a homemade dish instead of the catered offerings of the past. As the year's second half began, I found myself looking ahead to the holiday season with cautious optimism rather than dread. I'd decided to host a small Christmas gathering myself, intimate, meaningful, focused on connection rather than extravagance. I invited only those who had shown genuine remorse and effort toward healthier relationships. Some family members didn't make the cut, and for the first time I was okay with that boundary. Looking back on that painful Christmas alone with Takeout, I realized it had become a turning point rather than just a trauma. It forced me to confront painful truths about my family dynamics and my own complicity in them. It pushed me to value myself enough to demand basic respect. It taught me that sometimes walking away is necessary for genuine healing to begin. My parents learned difficult lessons too. They sought counseling to understand their enabling patterns with Rachel and their tendency to take me for granted. They began rebuilding their retirement savings, making peace with a simpler lifestyle that was actually sustainable. Most importantly, they started relating to both their children as adults, imperfect, complex individuals, rather than roles to be filled or images to be maintained. Rachel's journey involved the most dramatic external changes. Her downsized lifestyle came with unexpected benefits, less pressure, more authenticity, deeper connections. She started a small business consulting on social media strategy for local companies, using her experience to help others create sustainable online presences without the smoke and mirrors. Her marriage improved as financial pressure eased, and she began developing friendships based on genuine connection rather than networking potential. As I reflect on everything that happened, I'm struck by how a painful exclusion ultimately led to greater inclusion of my authentic self in all my relationships. I learned that real family, whether biological or chosen, is built on mutual respect, honesty, and reciprocity. I discovered that standing up for your worth isn't selfish, but necessary for healthy connections. And I realized that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling harmful patterns, even when that means saying no. That Christmas alone with Takeout wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a better one where I value myself enough to expect basic decency. One where I understand that love without respect isn't really love at all. One where I recognize that true generosity flows from wholeness, not from attempting to earn acceptance. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own relationships, know that you deserve better. You deserve to be included, respected, and valued not just for what you give, but for who you are. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for genuine connection. And sometimes walking away is the first step towards something healthier. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did it change your relationships? Drop a comment below. Sharing your experience, your story, might help someone else who's struggling with similar challenges. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by how much you give or how much you tolerate. It's inherent, unchangeable, and never dependent on anyone else's recognition.